Hey, Paul.
Hey, Fab. How are you?
I'm good. I'm intrigued.
You're
going to tell us about sales objections.
I told you
and you've been very mysterious about it.
Yeah, but I told you a little bit.
He just said we're going to peel the onions on here's the onions on sales objections. It's not telling me much.
That's because I'm going to put you on the spot.
There we go.
Fab, what do you do when you're trying to sell something for your own self and the prospect says, oh, I can't make a decision right now. Call me back in a couple of weeks. What do you do? Be honest.
I say, screw you, man.
I'm on bigger and better.
Yeah, I have a full pipeline, buddy. It's now or never.
I don't need.
No, seriously, I'll do what I shouldn't do, which is like I'll probably just agree with them. Cool. Sometimes if I'm feeling more adventurous, I'll probably be like, sure, that makes sense. Like, what are you going to be doing for the next few months? Like, what are you going to be thinking about for the next few months? So it depends. Depends how I feel.
So really, when I say I'm peeling off the onion, there's two. You said something very interesting there, and that's what it is. You said if I'm feeling courageous, right? You also said something, we laughed about it, but it's true. If you have a full pipeline, you're like, oh, just move on to the next one, right?
Yeah.
Is that really an objection, or is that maybe true? If you don't ask the question, you don't find out, right?
Right.
Like if you don't say, hey, okay, fine, I understand. I'll call you back in a couple of months, but, sorry, my allergies are going crazy. But if you don't ask what's up, you'll never find out, right? You'll be in the I think category, right? We often say that you don't want to be in the I think, you want to be in the I know. And the only way to be in the know is to ask the question. So, and what I'm really getting to here is two things. So one, when you're feeling courageous, you're doing the right thing. So always be courageous, because if you're not courageous, you're just wasting your time.
Right.
First, I'll tell you.
Boom.
Second thing is, I like that. Second thing I'll tell you is that often mostly sales objections are hidden behind maybe type answers.
Right.
You'll rarely get, I'll just throw a number out there. 5% of the time you'll get a real no. I'm not interested. Piss off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people will give you some kind of stall.
Right.
So that's the first thing. You need to, and to uncover that stall, that person has to be comfortable with you.
Yeah.
They have to feel like, okay, Fab, in this case, you're the culprit.
Nice.
I've got to feel like I can trust Fab. And the only way to do that in a business relationship is to take off the pressure, right? Particularly when you're getting what you think might be some lame-o excuse because they don't want to give you the real sales objection.
Right.
Now, so that's the first thing. So when I say peel the onion, you have to get rid of that first layer. You've got to get them to be honest with you by making them feel comfortable about what they've just said to you. So, the dog ate my homework. Okay, can you explain to me how the dog ate your homework? Well, actually, what really happened is, the hurricane came in and the homework blew out of the window. Oh, how'd that happen? Well, I wrote them down yesterday, and there's, let's call them 8 types of sales objections. There could be, you call it 10, whatever, but there's interest. The person truly doesn't have interest in what you're selling. And if that's the case, you're a bit of a numbskull, because that means you didn't do a good job in asking the questions. And then there's information, right? They say, oh, I need more information. Usually that's some kind of stall. Fine, once I get you the information, what's the next step? So you need to figure out. So, but the big ones are interest, money, I'd say, and competition often. Like they're already dealing with your competition. Now here's another question. I'm going to put you on the spot again. And think like a sales rep. It doesn't have to be like Fab. We've been doing this for almost 2 years now. Imagine yourself in that salesperson's seat, and you're a good salesperson. And, you've done everything well. You've asked all your, you've been strategic. Everything we've talked about. You've asked your open-ended questions. You've found out about everything, right? You've found out about their needs. You've found out about the opportunity you can create for them. You found out about their own motivation. They're willing to invest. Like, all these wonderful things. And then at the end, they say to you, really like this, but I'm not sure, sorry, I need to speak to my partner about it, right? So what do you do? We've talked about this before. I want to see if you remember. When someone's, I'm really mean with you today.
I'm getting tested. I didn't study.
I mean, I know I'm terrible. I'm sorry. So what do you do? But just tell me logically, what do you do? One, be honest, and what do you think you should do? My camera's going the wrong way. What do you think you should do when someone says to you, Fab, I really like that. I'm going to have to talk to my partner about it.
Mm-hmm. What do I do personally?
Yeah. And what do you think?
I haven't encountered it personally.
Really?
Yeah.
You've never really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Because usually I normally deal directly with, because I work with a lot of startups, and I usually work, with decision makers and people and if they're not the decision maker, they usually bring that person in at some point.
Well, that's a good answer, by the way. If you're talking to a decision maker, that means you're always talking to the right person. So kudos to you.
Yeah.
Gold star to Fab.
But I would say that's a tricky one, but and maybe I'll explain why. But I would probably try to understand. Great, can I know what you'll be discussing? And the reason why I don't feel it's always a great question, I'll be like, well, what we talked about. I don't know. That's what I would answer if I was in the person's shoes and I said I talked about. Well, everything we talked about.
So what do you really need to know, right? So there's a couple of things, right? Wouldn't it be good if you could talk to the partner with the person?
Yeah.
So that's one thing you should suggest right away. Say, hey, look, I understand you need to talk to your partner. What if we spoke to him together, right, or to her together? And what if they then say, no, that's not possible? What do you say next? And again, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, fair enough. I realize they're busy. I realize everybody's busy. What are you hoping to have? Like, what kind of discussion are you going to have, or what are you going to talk about, or what do you need to talk about during that discussion?
Okay, that's good. But what do you really need to know if you're not going to be there? And remember, you've done the whole process. What do you really need to know? What do you really want to know? If you're not going to be there.
I want to know if the partner is interested, if the partner also sees all this as a priority, or
the person that's going to be talking to the other partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like we know the person that we've been talking to. They finance it because you've done all your process. You know what their motivation is and all that stuff. But you haven't spoken to the person.
So you're assuming that the partner you're talking to is 100%. Well, what if they're not?
Right.
And Fab, that's what you can't assume.
Right.
What you can't assume, the question you need to, and I didn't invent this, so a lot of great salespeople have done this before me, is, partner one that you've been talking to, Mr. or Mrs. Partner One, if you had to make the decision alone today, what would be your decision?
Mm.
And if they say, I'm on board, then that's all you can do, right? You can just say, hey, do you need any extra information? Can I help you in any way? You want me to coach you? Do you want to do role play? Whatever. Like if they say, yeah, I want to buy, it's just a question of convincing my partner.
Right.
Then you can say, well, what do you think they're going to hesitate on? Whatever it is. But you need to uncover that. Then you're finding out that you have a champion, right? We call that a champion.
Right.
You've got someone who's carrying the torch for you, and that's important. And what you said before is smart, because you said, well, I've done everything. I've found out their challenge. I've found out their need.
Right.
Their motivation. So you're in your mind, you're saying, okay, they're on board, but you still need to confirm that. So that's an important one. But look, that doesn't happen to you often. So tell me the sales objection that you do meet the most. What is it that stalls you? Is it a money thing? Do people say it's too expensive? Like, what is it that happens in your case? And then I'll tell you what happens. I'll put myself out there too. I'll tell you what happens to me the most.
Yeah, it's funny because I was going through some old deals that I had never lost or closed or did anything with earlier today. I think so. There's a few. When I get further down the process, so when I'm close to the end, and this is very specific to me as a consultant, I realize that is, I usually try to quote based off of the value I try to bring, and not off of hourly pricing or whatever.
I hope so for all the podcasts.
But invariably,
Cost plus.
I'll get, okay, but how many hours is that with the hourly rate? So that's one. Two, I'll get the timing's not right. We're not ready, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so
And three, I'll just get missing in action. Missing in action.
Missing in action, that can happen. Then you got to ask yourself a question, and that to me is the most. I get those. Those are frustrating because you've done everything. They just they ghost you, whatever.
That usually happens early on. So it's usually like early in the process, fine, and I get it, whatever. And usually they come back like 8 months later. You're like, oh, okay. And then middle of the process will be the timing's not right, usually after an exploratory call type of thing. And then the what's your hourly, okay, it's all good, I get the value part of it, but what's your hourly rate? That's like that's when we were getting to like kind of the contract agreement stage.
Yeah, and that's negotiation. I don't see that as an objection. Someone asking you what's your hourly rate, I don't see that as an objection unless they stop it there. Yeah. But I think that's a negotiation, and
right.
Some people love to negotiate, some people, even if they see the value, right? They're saying, I would pay $100,000 for this, but I love to negotiate, and I'm going to try to bring it down to 50. You've got some people that are like that, and you have to deal with them, right? Or you have to decide not to deal.
Yeah.
So that I don't see as an objection per se.
Okay.
So that's interesting, but I mean, ultimately, where I'm getting at in all of this is that whatever happens, I've been playing chess a lot lately, and I want to give you an example. Do you play any chess?
No.
So I played a lot of chess online with different people. It's sort of like how I fall asleep at night.
Right.
And it's my little sort of guilty pleasure when I'm having lunch alone or whatever. I'll pick it up. And what I've noticed is that we're very emotional, right? So when someone eats my queen, you'll see people, or eats your queen, people react very quickly, and they usually knee-jerk react, or try to eat what you've just you ate the queen with, right? They're just, and I think we're the same way when we either get a sales objection that challenges what we're about to do, right? So if someone, let's say you've really peeled the onion and you get down to, well, Paul or Fab, I don't really see the value in what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people would get that knee-jerk, eat the queen reaction and start explaining, well, yeah, but there's this, there's that, there's here, there's there.
Right.
Instead of saying, can you tell me more about why you don't see the value, right? To take a stance back. So even if it's a sales objection, let's say it's a big one, Paul, we're going to wait 6 months on this one. What you really need to ask is, you've got to lower that. You've got to make them feel confident. Take the pressure off.
Right.
Lower the resistance. Take the pressure out of the situation. Just say, hey, of course, that's fine. You want to take 6 months. Can I know why? That's where you're peeling the onion. So if it's an objection, you'll find out. Because what you want more than anything in a sales situation, when you have a lot of clients, you want to qualify or disqualify.
Right.
You don't want to be in limbo.
No.
Limbo is the worst thing, right? All those maybes and those I don't knows. Like some people, the super optimist person says, oh, they said to call him back in 2 weeks. Yay, I'm going to call him back in 2 weeks.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, you're saying, but really, you don't know anything. It's all, well, I think they're going to, they're really nice to me, so I think they're going to buy. Honestly, I was one of those salespeople. When I started out,
I think we all are.
The super optimist. And then at one point, I became the super pessimistic one. Oh, they say call him back in 2 weeks. It's never going to happen. But neither of those situations are good. It should always be, of course, I'll call you back in 2 weeks. But can I ask you what the delay is about, And that's the dig and the open question, the two things is taking the pressure off. This is a tire gauge in the air is coming out. Take the pressure out. Or I've also been cycling a lot. I got 2 flat tires last week. So you got to take the pressure out and then really get to the core of why the person is doing what they want to. You just want to understand. Some people say you got to take control of the conversation. I don't really believe you're controlling the conversation as much as you're finding out the logic behind how the person feels. because ultimately the buyer controls. I'm sorry,
Yeah, I guess what you're just saying is not like you're just not just saying okay and then rolling over type of thing. You're still kind of pursuing that conversation.
Yeah, you're not saying okay
questions.
rolling over. Correct.
Right.
Saying okay rolling over, but you're also not just going into justification mode. You have to understand the question.
Right.
You have to understand the hesitation.
Right. So there's something that you said early on that I've still been thinking about. And when we were talking about like kind of the hourly rate, value pricing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you're saying like, oh, that's a negotiation, but isn't a negotiation kind of also an objection?
No.
Right? No? Because I can still kind of see it as, you don't know, right? Like you're still kind of in that.
Well, what I qualify as sales objection is something that is it's an objection to what you're saying. It's saying, hey, hold on, I'm not ready yet, right?
But aren't they kind of objecting to like what you're saying or what you're proposing? And isn't it like ultimately like a stalling tactic, right? Because they could say yes.
Asking for detail, right? If they're saying, how does that break down into an hourly rate? It doesn't mean they're going to say.
There's a difference between how does it break down and then pushing back. I get that.
I thought you were saying just if they're pushing back, then
yeah,
that's an objection. Absolutely.
Gotcha.
If there's clear pushback, if they're saying, hey, that's a big hourly rate, I'm not into that, then that's
not that into you.
Yeah, then it's an objection. They got the that's
gotcha. So then even in the negotiation, there can be some objection going. If there's more clarification, right? Maybe the proposal wasn't clear enough, or you just didn't address something. That's fine. That happens.
But that's another thing. You don't negotiate till the person. Never negotiate until you know that they're willing to go. Right.
Of course.
So someone who starts saying, "Well, can you do anything on the price? Can you do?" And let's say you can do something. Let's say you're selling a product. Big machine or even a small machine, whatever. And let's say they say, hey, can you help me out on the price? Well, before you start negotiating, you say, okay, so just so we understand each other here, you're interested, you like everything I'm presenting to you, it's to go, but you just want me to help you on the price. Then they have to commit, right?
Right.
So, and if they don't commit, you're like, I ain't going there. It says, well, I just want to know price first, then I'll make my decision. Well, what is it else? What else is bothering you? Negotiating on price is dangerous.
Of course.
But listen, if you gave yourself margin, like a lot of people do, like if you're a car salesperson or you're selling a fleet of cars or you're selling a product and someone's negotiating on price, that's why we've talked about this before. It's very important to attach value to what you're doing. Ideally, you don't want to negotiate, right?
Of course.
But let's say it's something out of the ordinary. Let's say someone's saying, Fab, I want to hire you for a year, right? And you're going to hire a few people to help you out, and it's sort of out of the ordinary, and you're saying okay, and then you'll say, well, look, I'm doing a long-term contract. Is there anything we can do to make this happen? I mean, that's not unreasonable, right? Saying, look, you're going to be secure. I'm going to be taking 3 of your employees. You're going to be working with me for a year. Can you do something on the rate since there's consistency and efficiency?
Right.
Then you might say, okay, let me think about it. I'll draw it up, and then you're giving the objection.
But then it's like, and that's something I know this is an episode we did a long time ago. And I know it was a long time ago because we were in the same room. So it was pre-COVID on negotiation specifically. And one thing that
do it in the same room again. We're allowed again. We're allowed to be in the same room.
I know, but now I just got lazy and I'm like, I packed my calendar to the minute. What I want to say, but one thing about negotiation is also the goal is not necessarily to just give something, right? Like you're not just going to be like, okay, fine, I'll give you 20% off. It's like, I'll give you 20% off if you sign, let's say, a 6-year agreement, a year agreement, like a long-term agreement, or if you agree to pay it all up front, or okay, well, we're going to remove some of the services I had proposed. So like negotiation is also not necessarily about just giving something. It's like, we're just, okay, well, it's more about changing the terms of the agreement.
Yeah, I mean, you can negotiate a lot of things, right? I mean, if you ask Chris Voss, negotiating is all about winning, understanding your client's objectives, and winning the negotiation, right? That's the real goal of a negotiation. But at one point, you also have to decide and be willing to walk away, right? Or
of course,
know where you're able to go and where you're willing to go, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of levels to negotiation. If you're doing a hostage negotiation, it's very different than if you're negotiating a price. So, but then again, maybe not, if you're willing to lose everything. But a negotiation, a good negotiation based on a commodity, let's say you're selling a big commodity, well, then your negotiation will be based on what it is you're willing to do, but you should be trying to win the negotiation. But yes, your client or your prospect, the person you're negotiating with, if they're negotiating, you need to understand what it is that they're trying to get at.
Yeah.
What are they hoping to get out of this? Right?
Yeah.
I was typically, but I'm a terrible negotiator when I want something.
Like when most people are.
What's that?
Most people are.
Yeah, and that's it. So if the salesperson, supply and demand, if they have a lot of supply and little demand, and I'm going in and I know that, well, then I'm a great negotiator.
Yeah.
But if I know there's only one of them in Montreal, like a special, guitar thing, I'm a guitar fanatic, as we've spoken before, well, then I might be like, I'm just willing to pay for it. Here you go.
Yeah.
And
of course. I mean, there's some scarcity there, right? Like obviously, like if there's only one person that sells guitars like that in Montreal and you can't buy them online because whatever, then they have.
So we're getting off topic a little bit because let's go. We can talk negotiation again, but really sales objections.
Right.
What I'm saying is, why do we peel the onion? Because hold on a sec. Someone's trying to call me, and I'll call them later. So why we peel the onion is that because often in an objection, you need to peel the onion because what the person will tell you 90% of the time hides something a little deeper.
Right.
Either the decision maker is not really the decision maker. Either, they're short on cash. They might have a hard time with cash flow. They don't necessarily want to tell you this, right?
Right.
So or they're, there's another priority. Well, then you can find out. It's just a question of trust. But once you've got their trust, once they feel, and I've said this before, once they feel that you're sitting on the same side of the desk as them, then it'll be a lot easier for you to understand the negotiation. And for someone to feel that you're sitting on the same side of the desk as them is when you really find out what they're trying to attain, what they're trying to do.
Right. Yeah. So, and I guess that's what you're saying, right? Because and that's a good way to summarize it and end it is like every objection really high. Like nobody's just objecting to something unless they really got offended by something you said and they just don't want to deal with you.
We call them sales objections. Just they're really roadblocks, right? It's not like
and it's just that's it. It's like a lot of people, and we can get into the psychology of it, but don't like conflict, or they don't like they don't like being mean, quote unquote. They don't like displeasing people, and so instead of telling you no, or sometimes they made a mistake, right? They're like, I think we're going to buy a CRM today, and they're all excited and they do demos with all these people, and then they're in a meeting and they're like, oh, CRM is definitely not a priority. And then they're like, oh, I made all these reps waste their time. I just don't want to tell them that. Yeah. And they'll be like, okay, well, I just need to think through, talk to my boss, see where that fits in. They're not going to tell you listen, I messed up. This is not a priority. If I was, but that's where peeling the onion comes in. Is continuing that conversation.
Yeah. And if you're doing an enterprise sale, it's even more important because, for having worked with huge companies, they'll often hide behind these different layers because there's sometimes a very complex decision-making process, and they're just turning you down. Yeah. I remember last year I pitched a huge project to a huge enterprise company. It didn't go anywhere. I mean, I tried to peeling the onion and stuff, and people passed the ball, and in the end you might not just find out, so you have to disqualify and say, okay, well, I'm going to move on to the next challenge that's a little bit easier to deal with, right? So.
Right. Excellent. Thanks, Paul.
So I want to thank Fab for being a sport on this one. I barely told him anything, and I put him on the hot seat, and he did.
Actually, the best way to not deal with sales objections, and we always get back to this, is having a full pipeline, right? Because you obviously look at it differently, right? Because yes, we were laughing, and I guess it's a full circle type of thing, but the reality is if somebody's being annoying and they're pushing back and they're stalling and they're not calling you back, you're just like, that's fine, whatever, lost. you know, and if they come back, good, but you don't need to chase after them.
If you have a full pipeline, if you have a ton of restaurants to choose from to go for dinner and one of them's closed, you're not going to be upset. If there's only one restaurant in your town and your kitchen's broken down and you're going to the restaurant and it's closed, you'll do anything to get in there, right? So
Yeah.
it's the same thing. You're right. It's a pipeline thing.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Salutes. Thank you, everyone.